Okay, so this is a big one.
It really is.
The UK is like really going all in on this carbon capture technology.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking serious cash here. You guys have sent us a ton of info on this, so
A lot to unpack.
yeah, a lot to unpack. How does this tech actually work? What's the potential upside? And of course, are there any downsides? Because let's be real, there are always downsides.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that's most striking right out of the gate is just the sheer size, the scale of this commitment that the UK is making. We're talking 21.7 billion
I mean, that's...
earmarked specifically for carbon capture and storage projects.
Whoa. Okay, so that's like
CCS.
CCS, right? Over the
Okay.
next 25 years.
That's their pledge.
That's a long time.
This isn't just dipping their toes in the water. This is like a full belly flop into carbon capture.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, this is it. This is how we're going to tackle climate change.
Just as the silver bullet.
Right. But is it, though? That's the question. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the 21.7 billion question.
Right. And they're already talking about how this is a win-win, not just for the environment, but for the economy as well. You know, creating jobs, especially in those areas, those industrial heartlands that have been hit hard by, well, frankly, the shift away from fossil fuels.
Right, right.
Which is kind of ironic when you think about it.
It is a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it does raise the question of, how sustainable are those jobs going to be?
Okay, yeah.
Are they going to be around for the long haul, or is this just a temporary sort of Band-Aid?
Right.
And how do those jobs stack up against, say, investments in renewable energy, which
right.
could potentially create even more jobs in the long run?
Okay, those are all excellent points, but I think before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit.
Okay.
For those of us who aren't, engineers or scientists, what exactly is carbon capture and storage? Like, how does it actually work?
Okay, so imagine this. You've got a power plant or a factory, and it's spewing out all of this CO2, these emissions into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Instead of letting all of that CO2 just escape into the atmosphere, we capture it.
Okay.
We trap it.
Yeah.
Right at the source.
We're stopping it before it can do any damage.
Precisely. We're grabbing that CO2, and then we transport it, often using pipelines, and then we store it.
Right.
We lock it away deep underground.
Really?
Yeah. In places like old oil and gas fields or these massive saline aquifers.
Yeah. So we're basically just like stashing away the evidence.
Kind of. Out of sight, out of mind.
But instead of under the rug, it's deep beneath the Earth's surface.
Exactly.
Wow. And the UK seems to think they have enough space, enough of these underground storage spots to hold centuries worth of emissions.
Centuries. That's what they're claiming.
Yeah.
It's a pretty bold claim. But we'll see.
That is bold. I mean, the government is really talking this up. They're comparing it to, like, the end of coal. This is huge.
Right.
But is it really the beginning of a new era? Or are we getting a little ahead of ourselves? Okay, the end of coal, a new era. But this carbon capture tech, CCS, I mean, it's not exactly brand new, is it?
You're right. It's been around for a while.
It sounds like there's more than one way to do it.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right.
Think of it like a toolbox,
Okay.
right? You've got different tools for different jobs.
Oh.
So you've got post-combustion capture. That's like you're grabbing the CO2 emissions straight from the smokestack.
Okay, so that's like the last-minute save before it gets out into the atmosphere.
Exactly, yeah. You're catching it right at the end. And then you've got pre-combustion capture, and that's where you remove the carbon from the fuel before it's even burned.
Oh, okay. So less to clean up later. That just seems like way more efficient. Why don't we always just do that?
Well, each method has, its own challenges,
Okay.
its own costs. And, pre-combustion, while efficient, it can be trickier to implement, especially when you're talking about existing power plants. But yeah, you're right. It has some definite advantages. And then there's also oxy-fuel combustion, where you basically burn the fuel in pure oxygen, which makes it easier to separate out the CO2.
Okay. That sounds complicated.
It's a bit more complex.
Yeah.
Each of these methods has its own sort of pros and cons, its own set of trade-offs.
Right.
And then you've got the really, I guess you could say the really futuristic one, which is direct air capture.
Ah, yes. That's the one where I'm like, what? It's like a giant vacuum cleaner just sucking the CO2 straight out of the air. That one just like blows my mind. But if we can capture it from, power plants and factories, why even bother with something so, I don't know, ambitious?
Well, because direct air capture has one really, really big advantage, which is you're not limited to capturing emissions from a specific point source.
Right.
So imagine you have these like air scrubbers strategically placed around the globe, capturing CO2 from the air, even in those hard to decarbonize sectors like aviation, for example.
Oh, okay.
So, it's like this kind of, safety net. Even if we can't catch everything right at the source, we can still pull it out of the air.
Right. Okay, I get it. It's like that extra layer of protection.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, of course, it's still, early days for direct air capture.
Right.
It's energy intensive. It's expensive.
Yeah.
But the potential is, it's huge.
Right. Okay, so we've captured all this CO2.
Yeah.
Now, what? I mean, you mentioned storing it underground,
Right.
but what's so special about these saline aquifers and depleted oil and gas fields?
Right. So it's not as easy as just burying it in a landfill somewhere. We need to make sure it stays put. We're talking about storing enormous volumes of CO2, potentially for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
So these saline aquifers, these depleted oil and gas fields, they act like these giant natural storage tanks deep underground.
Wow. So these formations are like the Earth's own like vault.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And are they big enough?
Well, that's the thing. The UK claims to have enough suitable geological storage capacity to hold centuries worth of their emissions.
Yeah.
But of course, there's always a but.
There's always a but because like vaults leak, right?
Well, that is the billion-pound question, isn't it?
Right.
And that leads us to some of the more, I guess you could say, critical questions surrounding CCS. Because while the promise is exciting, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are definitely potential downsides as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into those because something tells me it's a little more complicated than just a leaky vault. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? I mean, the cost.
Yeah.
This is a lot of money.
It's a big price tag.
21.7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Even for like a government, that's a lot. What are people saying about whether this is, money well spent?
Well, that's the billion-pound question, isn't it?
Right.
The UK government, they're really highlighting those economic benefits, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about job creation, boosting those former industrial areas. But, critics are saying that CCS, especially the direct air capture tech, it's too expensive.
Right.
And, history isn't exactly on their side. We've seen these kinds of mega projects, even with the best intentions, they often go way over budget.
So that price tag could be even bigger.
It's definitely a possibility.
Ouch. Okay, so even if cost was a non-issue, surely burying all this CO2 underground, that can't be the perfect solution, right? There have to be some environmental downsides too.
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as just out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Groups like Greenpeace, for example, they're waving some pretty big red flags. They're arguing that this whole CCS thing is really just a way of kind of kicking the can down the road.
Okay.
That it lets us keep relying on fossil fuels instead of, fully committing to clean energy.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on, like a gaping wound.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. They call it a moral hazard, right? That if we think we can just bury our emissions, then it takes the pressure off actually reducing them in the first place.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the risk of, what happens if those CO2 pipelines leak.
Yeah. Not a good thought.
No.
It's like those nuclear waste storage debates, right? Like everybody agrees it's a problem, but nobody wants it in their backyard. And all that CO2 just like hanging out underground, waiting to like seep out. I don't know, it makes you wonder if it's really sustainable in the long run.
It's a valid concern.
Mm-hmm.
And it really highlights how important those safety protocols are. The monitoring of these storage sites, making sure they're secure, because the stakes are high. If there was a major leak, the consequences could be really significant.
So it sounds like CCS is, well, it's a bit of a gamble, right? I mean, it's high stakes, no guaranteed win. On the one hand, you've got this potentially revolutionary technology. It could buy us some time to transition to, cleaner energy. But on the other hand, it's expensive, it comes with risks, and it might even distract us from investing in better, more sustainable solutions. It's a tough call.
It really is. And, there's no easy answer here. The UK is taking a big risk, a calculated risk, and, the whole world is watching to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Would this be the thing that makes carbon capture mainstream, or will it be, cautionary tale? We'll have to see.
A lot to think about. Definitely a lot to think about. So what do you think, listeners? Is the UK's big bet on carbon capture a stroke of genius or a risky gamble? Whatever your take, one thing's for sure. This technology is forcing us to confront some really tough questions about the future of energy. And those are conversations that we need to be having. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.